Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. My name is Chuck Delaclis, and I am a television producer and executive, having created a bunch of television programs over the years. I have made my foray into VR in the last year. I find it to be absolutely fascinating, and being in at this level in a ground floor of something, even though some people will say we're beyond the ground floor, I'm not sure we are. What I think is most important is the ability or the understanding of being able to merge the technology and the creative. Now, we hear that a lot, but if I can just ask for a show of hands of people who define themselves as creatives, if you'd raise your hands, and if you'd raise your hands, those of you who define yourselves as technically savvy creators, much larger amount of people. Last year when I came to this event, I was stunned by the amount of people who were here that I didn't know. I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. I go to NATPE. I go to Realscreen. I know probably 80 to 90% of the people there. I came here, I almost didn't know anybody. And I was blown away by the lack of the people who are part of the everyday creative environment not really being here and understanding what VR can add to and bring to the party. So when I was asked to moderate this, I was really excited because I felt like the ability to talk to actual people who get creative and can talk about taking the technical that is so brilliant and expanding it and taking it one step further where each and every one of us can immerse in the creative. I was really excited to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So, enough about me. I'd like to go down the list. I'm going to do a quick introduction and then ask each member of the panel to give a short description as to what they do and how they fit into what we'll call the world of VR. Sami Remley down the end there is the VR product and program manager at Weaver. What are you doing right now with VR?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Chuck. So basically, Weaver, I don't know how much familiar you guys are with Weaver. We're a VR production and distribution house. So we produce very high-end, very high-quality VR productions, both internally and with our partners, with animators, singers, creative artists, and so on. We also have a distribution platform called Transport, where we try to let everyone consume VR on Gear, Vive, other platforms, anywhere in the world, their home, in venues, pretty much in any shape and way possible, the channel. So some of our creations are like The Blue, if you've heard of it, Gnomes and Goblins, with the director of Iron Man, Jungle Book, Avengers, etc., and pretty much a lot of other really award-winning VR creations. So what I work on personally is all the product side on Transport and our network for distribution. So I'm happy to talk more about this.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, thank you.
Brad Spar is the head of emerging technology at Sony Music. Brad, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the world right now?
Yeah, so I lead a group. We focus on emerging technology, and that covers everything VR, AR, blockchain, high-res audio. We really get out in front of all of these new technologies, figure out how it's going to impact our business and what sort of new revenue opportunities we could bring to our artists, or what new types of creative experiences that we could make utilizing some of this technology, or if it's potentially disruptive to our business as well. So I sit in a corporate group at Music, so I work across all of our label teams and territories. And we advise them a lot on VR strategy, for example, and help them determine the kinds of things that they should be doing. And we work across Sony as well. So I work closely with our PlayStation VR team and our Sony Pictures team and our corporate team out of Tokyo to look for cross-company synergy to do some of these things as well.
Thanks. Shane Lindley, sorry about that, is the Senior Director of Programming and Product at Epix.
That's right, yes. So my name's Shane Lindley, and as Chuck said, I'm Senior Director of Programming and Product at Epix. Epix is a premium movie channel, and It's actually a really pivotal time for our company. We just launched our first 2 original series on Sunday, Berlin Station and Graves. And I joined just over a year ago with the mandate to kind of create all of the innovative digital content to support these 2 series.
Excellent. Ted Kenny, who I've known now for how many years, Ted?
About 20, 25.
Scary. Is the Director of Field and Technical Operations at Fox Sports. How does that title play into what's happening right now?
Right. Well, I have a daily job, which is the NFL. So I handle the NFL field and technical operations throughout the year. But because of my background in 3D, I've also been tasked with new initiatives as far as VR and new technology. And one of those things is live sports. We always know that sports pushes boundaries, whether it be resolution, frame rates, or anything like that. So we've also been high on the VR list. We are continually shooting VR with different companies. We have partnerships with a few companies, but we're always looking for more companies. And that doesn't mean just a camera company. It means anyone that deals with data management to AR, VR, it doesn't matter. We're looking at live sports as an added initiative or enhancement to what we do on a daily basis.
And finally, Stephen Haft is the SVP Innovation for Time Inc., oversees the likes of People, SI, Fortune, Time. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your world?
Well, I run innovation for a 92-year-old media company. Innovation is new media. New media is now in a crowd like this thought of as a very old term. But new media is everything since print for us, because when the new management arrived about 2.5 years ago, we arrived at a company that derived 95% of its revenues from print magazines. So in the course of the last couple of years, we have had to broaden that company out to become an omnimedia company. And as head of innovation, it means I sit in meetings talking about all sorts of things I know half as much about as a real expert would, but nevertheless not afraid to comment, so I'm happy to be here.
Stephen, is that frustrating, going into a brand that has been around for so long and trying to push them forward, trying to teach them things they don't know?
That's not a tech question, that's a culture question. As Peter Drucker, the wonderful, brilliant business writer who was writing in the 1930s about it, before there was Chris Christensen disrupting the world, there was Peter Drucker writing in the 30s, 40s, and 50s about innovation. And he said when, and you've heard various versions of it, but it actually comes from Drucker, when culture comes against strategy, culture always wins. So we are a 92-year-old print company with a fairly ingrained culture. I would say, in brief, I could go on longer, because it's kind of an interesting story if this were a business class, but when we first arrived, I worked for the CEO, there had been 5 CEOs in 8 years. So we first thought the culture issues we were facing were new management versus old. Then as we got further into it and pointed ourselves in the direction of digital, we sort of thought the issue was culturally was going to be print versus digital. But in the end, it turned out that the issue was metabolic, in that our core journalists turn out weekly and monthly long-form journalism. And there is no such thing as weekly and digital, monthly and digital, and not much long-form and digital. So the real challenge has been, and frustrating isn't quite the word, once you begin to identify a problem, we all know we're all producers at heart. Once you identify a problem, you're 2/3 of the way to the solution. So I would say in the beginning it was a little blind, maybe frustrating in that sense, but as we've begun to realize what we had to adjust for, it's become a great deal of fun.
I'd like to talk a little bit more globally to the group, and then we'll ask some specific questions along the way. But if you guys had that proverbial headset into the future, how do you see VR and AR playing a role in our everyday entertainment life, when it no longer becomes unique, if you will?
I can start. I think we have to. I think in VR, you're asking the consumer to make a pretty big sacrifice, not just in the cost, but to actually put a headset on. And so I think the first and most important thing is we have to create really highly premium experiences that the user is going to literally say, I want to put a headset on because I can get this and I can't get it anything close to this in any other medium. Second, I think we need a human interaction within VR, I think, is also really important, and not just in sports or music or anything else, but the ability to actually interact with other people, have social communication within VR, I think will greatly enhance the value. Doesn't mean that you still don't want isolating experiences in certain instances, but for, I think, a future that's very highly premium, giving you experiences that just aren't possible in real life, and still having human interaction contextual to that, I think, is really key.
Yeah, I think what we're asking when you talk about AR and VR, it's even though there is AR in VR, I think the future is more in AR because we are asking people to put the glasses on, and then even though AR does come with glasses, are we looking at a future to where you're not putting on glasses and it's more like the Matrix and we're moving screens around our house and projectors are this big versus this big, and you can put something on any wall at any given time. You want your fantasy sports on a wall, you want this on a wall with the resolution. Can you get that? And I think we are asking a lot, of course, with VR to put on the glasses and be in that world. Like in sports, we know that no one's going to put these glasses on for 3 hours and watch a game. So we're focusing more on short form content. We do have the live, but also pushing short form content, whether they're pre-produced, as well as turning clips around really quick. There was a home run that just won the game, and we had cameras in certain spots. Can we turn that clip around, throw it up on the web really quick within a couple minutes so that you can actually go see this clip in VR? And it's more of an enhancement to our live sports than seeing live sports all the time.
So Ted, what does that get me? In the big picture, I enter that world in a VR experience. What am I getting from that experience that I'm not necessarily getting from a simple 2D?
Right. Well, first of all, we have to understand 2D sports. We've trained the audience how to see 2D sports for the past 20 years with new technology, new resolution, multiple cameras, from 6 cameras at a game to 20 cameras at a game, whatever the count is. Fast cuts, the best announcers, the best producer director, the stories, the feature packages. We're never going to replace that. But VR does allow you to live in a moment that you might not be able to live in emotionally. So we can stick you in the stands, we can put you somewhere, like when you talk about college football in the Southeast, the crowd in the Southeast is amazing when you go to a college football game, and now you can actually be in that moment and sort of get that emotional attachment to that moment. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to take you out of the world that you're in and put you in a new world that you've never had the opportunity to be in.
Well, let's talk about that on a global sense then, because if you look at something that is what's happening right now with VR. So here we have somebody watching VR basketball for the first time.
Basketball games happening right now in VR, thousands of miles away from where I'm at. So this opens up a whole ton of possibilities. Oh, I could totally see watching football games like this, soccer matches, hockey. Ooh, ice hockey would be kick-ass. Man, this is awesome, actually. This is like very, very cool. The future is now, guys. This is freaking cool. Could I have ever afforded to go to a game like this? Hell no. Can I even afford to take my wife to a concert these days now without spending $300?
So here's my question. Here we have being on the floor at a basketball game. We have somebody who's watching a concert, and they get the opportunity to do this, and they get the opportunity to do that. Can you guys talk about the difference between 360 and VR? And it seems that a lot of people are claiming VR when it's 360, and a lot of people who are really doing VR look at 360 and poo-poo it.
Yeah, totally. I can take this one. So basically, I think the first premise that we need to agree on is that VR as a technology or as a kind of like a tool to let humans experience something different can be pretty much defined as a trickery of senses to make you feel you're somewhere else or doing something else or just taking you out of your in-body presence and being present somewhere else. So currently, like with the current technology, what we are able to trick with the senses is just the visual aspect and the auditory aspect. So we can put you in the sense that like you see a stereoscopic thing and we like just project something on your eye, you look at a screen with some lenses and you get the feeling that you're seeing somewhere else that you are, and something with spatial audio. And for this kind of subset of the senses and the qualia that you kind of can trick your body into thinking you're somewhere else, then 360 it seems pretty kind of similar in the sense of like you have this sphere around you or inside a dome of panoramic content and you're just looking at it as the same focal length and so on. So right now, it kind of seems that like there's no big deal in terms of the difference between 360 and VR. And from my perspective, I mean, we shouldn't really differentiate it as far as the consumers is getting like really much more into the platform. People are getting interested in it. It's much more accessible right now with the current technology and price points. But when we get into actual like real VR in the sense of like being able to teleport somewhere, like the Matrix, there you need like haptics. You need to be able to really feel, like have this seamless feedback loop between the virtual and the physical. You have like this merged reality concept, like what Intel's called merged or mixed reality or AVR, VAR, whatever people call it these days. You have like, you really become one with what's virtual around you. And you can have like go back to entertainment, for example. Like you can be like just stuck in traffic and having your superhero sitting next to you in the car. Like you think they're actually there and you can like ask them to move around the traffic and you can see the traffic just moving around. And so it's really much more immersive, like there's this complete suspension of disbelief, and from both ways, like from physical to virtual, and then the feedback loop from the virtual affecting the physical, and across all the senses. So 360 video nowadays like can be seen as like some sort of immersion, which is perfect for an entry point, but it's definitely not the end game. And we really have to think about this as like the early days of any other technology platform. Like you could just look at the internet in the 80s or 90s and say like this really sucks. It's just for geeks sending files academically for each other. But there's no way to see like the actual things that are built on the network effects and the adjacent possible being pushed forward and forward. It's impossible to imagine Uber 20 years from now. It's impossible to predict Airbnb. So we really have to keep an eye, like a much more open eye about what's possible. And then 360 as like an entry point, which is definitely not the end all be all, but like a really nice starting point.
That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead.
It seems to me the two are joined now, and that's not healthy for VR, but I expect it's working for those to my left who are developing cutting-edge VR, because VR isn't where it needs to be to have a pitch beyond you can see what's going on behind you, or I can be at that place watching something 1,000 miles from here at that game, but I'm actually not in the game. I'm actually not part of it. I don't have the haptic or social experience of being part of it. I think VR probably over the next year, and some of the sourcing of it will come from people leading us in music and sports. I think Mark Zuckerberg sent a message to us all the other day saying that Facebook is going to figure out how to create the truly socialized VR experience. I believe once those two streams are joined, it's like the Ghostbusters, when you join the streams of the social to the point of view, the haptic, and the capacity of capturing the space that VR presents, more than I can see what's behind me, and I should spend $300 to do that.
So that, in essence, gets us beyond the creatives coming up with experiential situations.
Right now, there is an oversupply of demand, oversupply of supply, and not enough demand, in my view.
Well, let's talk about that in particular. Brad, you just recently did the Carry Me experience.
Right.
Which, here are a couple stills from it. And I'll let you, as I sort of click through those stills, talk about transforming into a different experience.
Yeah, so we announced this last week, and we'll be releasing this in November. This is a 3.5
Whoops,
minute.
my bad. Little music. Go ahead.
At least play the song. No, I'm just kidding. This is a 3.5 minute experience that we didn't actually shoot a single frame of video. We built this entirely in a game engine, and we did it because we found that sort of highly immersive visual effects or game engine technologies leverage the capabilities of VR better than 360 video. So in this particular example or this project, you feel like you're floating upward on this journey through a series of these really beautiful environments, and there's lighting and animation and effects, and we played with scale and motion, and we actually did scan Kygo and stylized him to put him into the scene. But it's really transporting you into this entirely new dreamlike world. And we think the response that we've gotten so far is people really feel like they're floating. Their brain believes it, that they're actually going on this journey literally into the song. And we think that this is really exciting for us, this technology. We're looking at this kind of technology much more aggressively than putting cameras at concert venues. And I think when we think about that, when we think about the concert-going experience, we're viewing it as we have to completely reimagine it in VR. It's not, let's put a camera on the front row or on the side of the stage. It's, if you think about concerts, you're working within physical constraints. You have a plot of land that you built your venue on, and you have to build it in a way that can get 20,000 people in there, and you put a stage on one end. And why would we replicate that and not create some extraordinarily new type of concert simulation or experience? And these kinds of technologies, and we're really excited about volumetric capture, we're really excited about light field technology, being able to take an artist and place them into this sort of dreamlike world and create an entirely new kind of experience is where we're headed.
And it's interesting to me because as a traditional storyteller, I've always, from the earliest days, believed that every story needs your beginning, your middle, and the end to be fulfilling. And what I'm seeing more often than not in this world is right now in VR, it's much less linear. The audience in VR seems to be a little more forgiving right now, that they can float, that they can hear a song and immerse themselves into it. So initially, when I started entering into the VR world in my own mindset, I was like, well, how do you take existing things and make them applicable in VR? I think that was the wrong way of thinking. Do you guys agree?
Well, I think we'd all say that one of the best things we've seen in the last year was The Martian, and The Martian was great because Ridley Scott, on money that you would never have spent on VR, had created a zettabyte of material that the producers had to work with and a true 360 within which to place me. So I would say, yeah, in the very short term, I think your instinct is correct. Look at some of the, specifically the CGI-driven sources of material right now to play with and grow the medium in, because I do believe that it's the CGI-driven and the animation and the game-driven. There's VR games being sold on Steam right now. And it's the only profitable part of VR that I'm aware of right now are the games being sold on Steam. So in fact, I do think this whole CGI and animation space is the great place to be now while the social haptic new VR experience comes together.
And while we're on that, there is the actual gaming aspect beyond that, which is entertainment in a new and creative way.
I'm about to experience Mission Impossible virtual reality. It's like Tom Cruise in the movie, hanging on the side of the plane. It's awesome.
Is that what you're talking about?
Fun, huh?
It is fun. And
That's gonna be expensive to buy the plane if you're a gamer. Like to have that in your front yard to do that.
I mean, which I guess takes me to the idea of the business and needing to convince those who spend the money to fund VR and to fund experiences like this. Do you find it to be an uphill battle to push your teams, to push your leaders to understand that this is the future?
Yeah.
Or the present?
I'll take that one. I think it's pretty interesting, as I said, with Epix, with our movie partners with Lionsgate, MGM, Paramount, creating these original series. One of the key drivers for those series was making these innovative experiences. And we were very fortunate, or I was very fortunate, with both of the original series to be completely embedded with the production teams on set, either in Berlin for Berlin Station, or with Graves in New Mexico, and really just being there and being a part of that production really kind of brought the whole production level of the VR experience to another level that you couldn't probably, you're going to be spending double your money if you're doing this kind of thing from scratch. But I think the beauty of being embedded with the team shooting the show was a great help.
I think business model, I think, is, there's a couple of scenarios I think are starting to emerge. Location-based entertainment, I think, has a lot of potential. It's already really emerging quite rapidly in China. Sony Pictures did something with The Void that's in New York right now with Ghostbusters at Madame Tussauds. That's a $20 ticket for a sort of entire, not even room scale, like warehouse scale VR experience. But when you think about amusement parks, or you think about hypothetically a Dave & Buster's or some other kind of, call it VR arcade, as a business model for people who will actually go to a place that has a plane, or has other types of props or things that are impractical for the home.
I think Ted's got one in his front yard.
In the case of Kygo, we're going to sell that on a transactional basis. We're not going to give it away for free. We want to establish a precedent that high-end premium experiences should be premium and not given away. And so in the case of Kygo, that will be sold on a transactional basis. I think that there are third-party aggregators that are starting to deploy VR platforms, aggregating VR content. When you look at content acquisition budgets out there in 2D content, they're huge. They're multi-billions of dollars, and from some of the larger players, I think those kinds of there will be dollars from them that will start to gravitate towards funding VR productions, and whether those fall under a subscription model or some other type of model is TBD. My gut feeling is that it will fall under some kind of subscription model. I think that'll be a real business with content being funded by those aggregators. And then you have brands, brand sponsors that are underwriting costs. It seems a little bit more obvious today because it's the new shiny thing, but I'm not sure that that's probably not the most lucrative opportunity, I don't think.
Well, and when I hear that, I think back to when before high def was high def, people were buying standard televisions, and then they were able to get a high def television, which may or may not have had 3D, and there was no upcharge. The content was pretty much now expected. So Ted, you actually made the transition from standard television to high def to 3D, and now to VR. At what point is the audience going to be like, I'm not paying for that, you got to give it to me?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch of different levels, certainly. With HD, I mean, the issue was the TVs were more, there wasn't enough content, just sort of like we're talking about now, not enough content. But also the networks their infrastructures had to upgrade. So the networks on HD took a huge hit. At least the networks aren't going to take a huge hit on VR. But as far as VR, again, some phones now sell and you get the glasses for free. So that's great, you have glasses for free, but where does the content come from? I think it goes right back to where you're talking about where does the money come from to make these great things. And And as you were saying, location-based things, those are an easy one to look at. I mean, it's hard to get the money, but at least you have a physical, tangible thing. You're going to say, here's something we're going to shoot. We're going to go onto a stage, and we're going to do CGI, and we're going to do all this stuff, and it's going to create this 5-minute piece that people around the world can see, and we're going to make this much money, and there's a business case for it. The harder parts are when you talk about brands, like you said, it's the brands come forward, they want to spend some money right now, but it's not going to be there forever. So that next level, how do you keep VR going? What's the, and again, go back to one of your other questions, what is VR? I mean, I still don't, if you ask anyone what VR is, they cannot give you an answer. I mean, is it 360? Is it 360 strip view? Is it 360 stereoscopic? Is it more taking you into an immersive world? And if you say an immersive world, what does that mean? Because to me, an immersive world means you're somewhere, a different realm, but also it's got to be 3D to give you that emotional impact, and you have to be able to move around it. But that's just my take on it. But there's so many different layers. But as you were talking about, for right now, just having VR is good for VR, and it'll separate itself in the future. But we don't have enough eyes on it to create business case scenarios. But I think that will come, and it's going to sort of get flushed out. I don't have the magic answer for that.
And I think that's a challenge also, talking about from the transactional point of view. Like, if I want to buy a CD, or a, MP3, I go to iTunes. If I want to buy an app, I go to the App Store.
Right.
If I want to buy a video, I go to the video store. Where do I go to buy VR? Where is that? I think the audience needs to be more
And Chuck,
educated
going
on
back
that.
to your own experiences with traditional media, advertiser dollars pay for that. And we've seen this year a lot of advertiser dollars in the VR space. What I think you have to look at is that in 2015, $26 billion worth of advertising accounts shifted their agencies of record. It's the largest number in the history of advertising. That means for each of those accounts, there was an incumbent that had the business, and there were 4 companies at least trying to get the business, and everybody needed to tell a news story. What was the news story in 2015? VR. So you suddenly had Mondelez making VR for Oreos, and if Oreos has it, M&M's has to have it, and suddenly you have the whole snack food category. And then if I am now a consumer, this is all supply side stuff. Who's going to pay for it? Can it sustain itself as a business? It's all supply side. Where's the demand side? The demand side is 100,000 to 200,000 people. Now, in the world that you came from in the media, which funded 50 years of television, that was media that was sold on a CPM basis, cost per thousand. So let's say highest CPMs, we can imagine $150, $200 CPMs for 100,000 people. You've just funded a $20,000 project.
Well, and we're also stuck in the VHS Betamax conundrum, which is,
Sure. What do you get behind?
you're doing something with Mondelez for one of their products, and whatever one of their confectioner products are going to be, and now you're stuck saying, okay, well, what are we going to put it out on? How's it going to be released? What phone are they going to watch it on? Or are they going to have a separate device? So where's that going? Will it be homogenized? Will it be, yes, we know that there are some channels coming out there, but is there a way where this is going to be merged where people don't have to make these decisions when VR becomes global?
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
maybe once there's more of an evening of feature specs, like you said, there's so many different versions of flavors, if you will, of different things to do. Like once that starts to get a little more balanced, which I think it will, then people will start to
And it also,
gravitate.
absolutely, and it also takes producers, creative producers, real traditional creative producers to wrap their head around this, take a concept and push the envelope. Because right now, what you said happened to you happened to me back in the 3D days. I would walk into a room, and I came from the television and film side, and I'd walk into a room and I called them the 3D nuts. They're all stereo club guys who created these cameras. They're all engineers, and they're very bright, but they didn't understand the film or TV side.
totally.
And it's the same thing in VR. I mean, it's not across the case. There's a lot of people now involved in VR, which we're glad to have, that come from both sides. But there's a lot of engineers, and they don't really understand the concept. So it takes producers to say, here's what I want to do in my space, in my project, tell me what I can do, and they'll tell you what they can do, and then say, okay, but I want these 5 other things to happen, and they might not know how to do it that moment, but if you say push on those 5, they might figure it out. And there's a whole nother language that we still haven't even touched yet in VR and AR that's going to happen, but it takes us to push people.
Well, and I don't know that there's that conversation happening on a global scale yet. Certainly there are specifics, and I think, Semi, you can talk a little bit about that because you sort of cross that boundary between creative and technical.
Yeah, I mean, like, just going
Or
back
you
to
toe the line, if you
I mean, going back to your question about like what should happen in the industry, or kind of like across different industries, to let VR really be agnostic of consumption channel. Like, if I want to consume VR, I don't want to care about which platform is being built on. If I want to build VR and create VR, I don't want to care about all these different platforms and all these walled gardens. I think the answer, at least today, is something along the lines of WebVR, which is like you just create something and it's on the open web. You just launch a web page, it has VR in it, you just put on your headset. You don't really care who built this, if it's native or not, it just works. And in order to get there, I mean, there's a lot of steps that need to be achieved. Like WebVR right now is pretty much established in terms of like a starting point. I think Safari, pretty much Chrome and Firefox are supporting it. I think Facebook came up with a new browser called Caramel, if I remember correctly, it also supports it. And pretty much anything very soon will be able to support some version of VR on WebVR. You just need to have enough compelling content on it. But what this also leads to is that, going back to the previous monetization question and business models, it's really important to keep in mind that like this is really a new computing platform as a whole. Like if you were to, again, going back to the example of smartphones or mobile phones or internet, if you look at how content is created and consumed by people, it started with just having, you go to this one URL, all right, like www. I don't know, like let's say digitalhollywood.com, and I just read what's about it there. And then I finish, I go somewhere else, and I just go, I can't even, before hyperlinking was a thing, and just being able to jump around from experience to another, and being able to go end up with this, just, whirlwind of like, I'm starting looking at a YouTube video about, I don't know, trees, and then I end up 5 hours later watching something about Disney, and like, just because of jumping around in these portals. Before the metaverse is established, which is gonna happen very soon, with more people creating stuff for VR and linking them correctly, you can't have enough usage of VR and people just consuming and doing stuff on it to monetize it correctly. You can't really think about all the e-commerce or v-commerce, whatever they call it, on VR, all the advertisement stuff, or the like in-app purchase equivalents, or any kind of business model that will get created from VR. So I think before VR becomes much more unified and less of a walled garden situation, it's gonna be hard to really like reap the value out of it, same as it was for the web, and then the app store came and you have these apps, and now everything's going to chatbots, and like forget the apps, just go directly to whatever you want to get. So like we need to get more there in the industry. And I think one of the problems is that right now it's not that accessible yet. So it's just a natural transition phase.
So I'm going to actually open up the room to some questions in a minute, but I'd like to pose a very specific question to the group, and if you could answer it short, because we're going to run out of time in a minute. But for people out there who want to be part of the game, where's the money? Where's the money for someone who's out there who wants to break into this world, who's got the creative idea, who wants to figure out their way in? Where's the money?
That's always a tough one.
I know, that's why I asked.
That's it's hard work, it's hustle, it's networking, it's everything we've been taught from our parents all the way through this industry. When I went into 3D, it was new. We produced U2 3D with 2 different people, Vince Pace and Steve Sclair, who were rivals. I was just a producer. I didn't care about either one of them. I just wanted a good show. And then I joined one of their companies when they opened it. And I learned very quickly, even though my role wasn't this, I turned my role into raising money because there were so many people out there interested in VR. I started touching base with everyone from Samsung to Panasonic to Sony to brands, and I sent letters and I called, and ultimately I can make a phone call to Korea and get $600,000 in 10 minutes to go do a show just off a phone call after that. But you have to get to that point of just hustling in this crazy Hollywood to make those contacts with brands and other people. And also, if you don't have those contacts, is finding out who does and befriending those people and working hard, but also shooting stuff and getting a reel. I know it's tough. It's one of those things that especially, but with new media, it's easier. So that's the plus, is with new media, it's easier to sort of attract people, and that's good.
And definitely, if you have that idea, I wouldn't go in and just say like, I've got an idea for some VR, let's go find the money for that. Like really flesh that idea out, sell people on, get them inspired by whatever it is you want to create, and that will follow. Like you said, it's going to take hustle, but someone's going to, like, as long as you come up with that idea that no one else has done, that's what really
That part of the
pushes.
entertainment business
That's
hasn't changed.
that's never
Right.
that's
Well,
never
well,
changed.
so with Sony Music, I mean, you find a smaller band, you find a band in Hollywood that is up and coming, and you say, I'm going to do this for you for free, and then whatever you do, you take it to Sony Music and say, this is the ideas that I come up with, and this is what I can do, and they'll take notice.
Brad will give you his
And
email
they'll
at
give
the
you
end of the
and
session.
And Brad will give you a contract right off of that.
Yeah, he'll hook you up right now. And so with that, we now know,
If it's good, I'm here to listen.
And so, okay, that's not changed. Do you say that it's smarter and better for somebody to go in and say, hey, I have a unique way to take The Simpsons and make it uniquely VR? Or do you say, I've got my new idea that I'm going to come in from scratch and I'm going to approach it in my own way?
I think it's the latter. I think if you, my instinct right now is, and for sports it's not. I gotta carve out sports. Is prototyping something in Unity or Unreal Engine is a fast and relatively inexpensive way to actually get a prototype built that you can show someone in a headset that is going to really showcase a lot of the capabilities of VR. We ran a program with Sony Pictures and USC this past summer, and we brought USC students in for 10 weeks full time and had them prototype VR experiences. And you would be shocked what a team of 2 college kids can do in 8, 9, 10 weeks in terms of using a game engine. And so getting something built, like just building stuff, I think is first. Coming in with like a 2-page written treatment that I want to go shoot a video is hard, unless you come with a huge track record and credibility. So game engine stuff to me is probably where I would start to prototype if it were me.
And I'd say, Chuck, it depends on, I'm in 24 years, so I've been through versions of this conversation that go back to before there was a Weinstein Company in the independent film space. So, and at the beginning of Miramax, actually, when I first started. So I would say it depends on who you are is the answer to that question. If you are a master's student at USC studying game design, then absolutely the way to do it is to go make it. If there's a Casey Neistat sitting in this audience who can act in it, write it, and shoot it, then you gotta go, get out of here, go make it. If you are, to Ted's point a minute ago, the producer who's going to conceive of something, absolutely do not walk in with a 2-page treatment. Walk in with a piece of, the old, it really hasn't changed. You
Yeah,
want to
that's
make a
the
musical,
takeaway.
hire Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, it's-
Walk in with a piece of talent, walk in with a piece of rights. If you live in the town, if you've come all the way here from some small town in Pennsylvania, where Joe the plumber lives, you be the first person that goes to Joe the plumber and says, Joe, I want to do your first VR series. That's your piece of talent. That's the rock around which you build it. Wherever you are, as a producer, you're going to have an opportunity to tie up a piece of rights, be the first person to talk to them about, I'm going to be your VR, I'm going to be your biographer in VR, and take that piece of talent, leverage the talent into the deal.
And if you're a technical person, partner up with a creative and
Yeah.
go at it together.
Can I have the idea, how to plumbing?
So I'm
Joe the
going
plumber on
to.
how to plumb.
so
So
I-
one thing they never asked him.
I'm going to open the room up to questions. There's just, I want everybody to look at something because I don't know how many people are familiar or aware that The Simpsons did just come out with their first version of VR. And it made me laugh a little bit. So I just feel like it's a nice way to sort of open up too.
Here comes two. What stupid you do in those plans. Spent the night in the rooftop. Oh, my friends have died. Why did I borrow the money from them? Damn me! Ow!
It's always fun to sort of see VR make people make fun of their own
You're
media.
live, yeah.
All right, let's open it up a little bit, please.
This is mainly for Ted and Brad. Have you guys totally given up on the live action, either, idea, thinking that people just will not wear, goggles for an extended period of time? Or is it more where you think that you need to wait for production creatively to catch up with a whole new form of producing a music event or a sporting event so that people will watch it? Because you've got young kids now who have access to VR, who are wearing them for hours on end. To them, it's natural. They don't think twice about it. And so for them to watch a sporting event or a concert, that way, it's gonna be more strange for them to take off the goggles than it will be to put them on.
I mean, from Fox standpoint, I mean, we're high on VR, we're high on live sports. We actually just put out our Fox app, VR app, and it's powered by Live-like. And one of the things is our app is part live VR, part augmented reality. So behind you, you actually are sitting in a suite, and in that suite you have options. You can go see highlight packages, you can see some of the best plays of the week, you can see stats. Front view is, so we did college football. We've done 4 college football games now. 2 weeks ago, Oklahoma game with this app live, and we had 8 cameras around the stadium, which also is a help for live sports. In 3D, you used to add so many layers of people in 3D. With VR in sports, the overlay is much easier because you're talking about fixed cameras, and you're talking about static cameras basically. So it's less obtrusive. And so we're shooting that, and so you're in a suite, and you can actually choose which camera you go to. As well, we have a produced feed, which is leading you through the cameras. So you have options, and we learned early on that giving people more entertainment value as opposed to just live has really helped. Giving them options to look at stats that they wouldn't normally get at any time, as well as features behind them. So we are absolutely shooting live sports. We shot the US Open this year. We shot Monster Jam, and we're continuing on. We're going to shoot a lot of.
Shooting them in a way that the minute you say all lockdown static cameras.
Correct.
Well, it's a step backwards from where we are now, where a camera can zoom and take you on the edge.
No. You can zoom in these cameras. You can. We have them on Steadicam. We just did a test with Skycam, and we had one on Skycam. So we're doing that. The problem with VR is if it's not stabilized and it moves too fast, I'm going to get you sick. I'm going to get you really sick.
Right, but there are protocols in place now. Somebody from Nikon, but the other thing, talk about how they're testing, so they know the parameters and the limits at which you can do things, especially robotically, where you.
Right. They know their parameters. We have our set of rules. Where's the overall rules for everyone not to get anyone sick? This goes back to 3D, when it came up on screens. If there's 2 images that your right eye and left eye is seeing, and they're 14 pixels out, left and right, and both your eyes do this, which they're not trained to do, and you walk out with a headache, well, yeah, because one eye was up, one eye was down. What's the rule from whether it be the motion picture industry or SMPTE or whoever that says you cannot have a picture more than 6 vertical lines out? There never was, and there still isn't to this day. And so same thing with VR. VR has to have some kind of standards in the future for it to live, so we don't hurt people.
So I think what you're saying is you have not given up on it. You're actually embracing it.
We are 2 feet in and moving forward, and you might see Lady Gaga this year in the Super Bowl in VR.
And to take that a step further, this entire conversation will be different a year from now if in the next 12 months there's one hit. This is entertainment. We are a hit-driven business. The first time some producer or creator or Casey Neistat or somebody figures out that first hit that gets people to buy goggles and wear goggles and experience things, this conversation will be very different.
We are a derivative.
What Ted is talking about has now a new permutation. I don't know whether it's the company you're using or another company I've just heard about, where you can now be in that suite with 5 of your friends and be talking to each other live in the suite and invite a party behind you while you're watching that game. Now introducing the social and engaged aspect to it, you're going to take just the viewing aspect a giant step forward into what becomes true VR.
Yeah, so we were doing originally 360 or 180 in stereo, and it was just live. We've added a suite. We've added the opportunity for people to join you in your suite. So if your buddy's in New York, you can invite them. They can sit right next to you. They have an avatar. You have an avatar. Your mouse move. He could be in his Barcelona jersey. I can be in my Juventus jersey, whatever it is. So you're creating this whole fantastical suite where you have the social engagement. And then you start adding stuff like worlds that Bradley was talking about, and able to take your friend into another world, or AR as well. Because we didn't really touch much about AR, but I think that's going to be the future about watching football at home or any sports or any show and being able to put stuff in different areas and grabbing anything you want.
So
Real quick, I just wanted to say one last thing on music is, you're going towards reimagining the experience. What I'm convinced isn't going to work is I'm going to plop a camera down in the front row, come back in 2 hours, stitch it together, and think that that's going to be a business. I think you have to reimagine the entire. You can't just do that. It's got to be more than just look around. Yeah.
Anybody else? So based on what we're talking about, it goes back to something we talked about earlier, which is the applications and everything that we're talking about isn't really so much about taking what we're used to in entertainment, which is that proverbial beginning, middle, and end, but it's really about creating a brand new environment for people who are able to interact in a unique way while living in an entertaining environment. Does that sum it up?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And that was kind of the guiding principle with what I did with BerlinStation.com. If you're not familiar with it, it's a modern-day spy thriller set in Berlin, really about an agent for the CIA, and really looking at the kind of the personal toll that being a spy, leading a double life, puts on you. But we also wanted to explore. The show was set on location in Berlin. We shot there. And we wanted to really we thought that's a place that a lot of American audiences wouldn't be familiar with. So we really wanted to put the user or the audience right in the middle of the city. So that's what we did. And actually one of the enhancements we did, it's the first, it's a web experience in 360 video, but we also combined it with some interactive touch points where you can tap around on the screen to find out more information. So it's a combination of like interactive video with 360. That really adds as like a story extension. Like I said, it's a spy thriller. There's a lot of different complex threads, plots, double crosses, and all that kind of thing. And every time you come back to the website, some more of those threads will be open. So it acts as kind of an enhancement. It's an additive experience that does live on its own.
Well, it's the most overused phrase in entertainment, but what I'm hearing out of this is think outside of the box, because when I came into this whole part of the business, my takeaway was that how do I apply my linear storytelling to VR? My walkaway, my takeaway after hearing all you guys speak is throw that out the window, and how do you make it truly immersive and get people to get in there, stay in there, be in there with the people they care about or choose to be in there with, friends or enemies, and actually partake in a whole real environment that's fabricated for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to add like one kind of thing to this closing note. I would say that, just to be very honest, not everything is meant to be done in VR. We don't want to end up with like, in the 2000s, we have this, like, just everyone want to do something for the internet, like we have this stupid .com bubble. A lot of things are just inherently not made to be done in VR. A lot of amazing, beautiful things are just so inherently slam dunk fit with VR. and interactive storytelling, everything you want to do. And you can also have some aspects of more linear stories in VR that look amazing if you just want to sit back and like passively be immersed and just in your bed. But a lot of things that are like the magic happens outside of this thing that we're used to, and unless you're really thinking outside of the box and of like this type of experiences, definitely experiments with VR, but don't think it's just like I just slap a camera, 360, a Theta or whatever, and now I've done VR. Like you just really have to think about what's special about this medium, why is it really taking us further, and how to make the most out of it.
The first question when you're going to do a VR project is, right, why should this be in VR? And we'll point out the reasons.
Absolutely.
That's step one.
That's a great takeaway.
And the
Same
first,
for AR,
and,
same
and
for
the
AR.
first thing when you all leave here, the doors are going to open in about a minute. When you all leave here, my fellow conferees and new best friends in this room, take the business cards of the people who work at ad agencies. My personal advice, I produced a lot of stuff. If I were you, I would be taking business cards of people who work at ad agencies, not bothering to take Sony's business card. He's a great guy, but the producer of Simpsons is actually calling him. So he isn't going to have a lot of time for you. Talk to the folks at the ad agencies. They have more money than what they know what to do with right now, and you may really have a chance to do something with somebody from a brand more quickly than with any of the media execs
And they got to spend it by
we
the end of the year.
represent. And they have, yeah, exactly.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it.
These are the best months of our life.
It's funny.